I'd like to say a very good morning to all of you. I hope you're doing well. My name is Caroline Schultz. I know that I have met many of you, and it was nice to see the list of participants and see so many names that I recognized. I'm the Executive Director of Ontario Nature. First of all, I would like to express our deep appreciation to all of you, our members. You enable us, Ontario Nature, to do our work to protect Ontario's wild species and wild spaces. And basically, without you, there would be no Ontario Nature. I know it's been a difficult couple of months for everyone, so I hope you're all doing well and have been able to get out and about and safely enjoy nature, especially with the blooming of spring flowers and bird migration. And now it's turtle time, and I'm sure many of you have been seeing turtles basking and on the move, finding nesting sites to lay eggs. We're delighted that you are joining us for this webinar about Ontario's turtles, which will be brought to you by two staff experts, Smera Sukumar and Gabriela Zagorski. They'll be sharing information about turtle life history, helping you learn about how to identify each of our native turtles, and also how to help turtles that are in danger, especially at this time of the year when they're seeking their nesting sites. You'll be able to ask questions by clicking the Q&A icon. If you hover at the bottom of your screen, you should see that, and if you click on that, you can type in a question. And then at the end of the webinar, John Hassel, who's our communications director, who introduced everything at the beginning, he will be reading out the questions, and then our experts will be able to answer them. It now gives me great pleasure to introduce Smera Sukumar. Smera joined Ontario Nature in 2016, and now Smera is our Nature Reserves Manager. And she's also responsible for our citizen science program. She has an MSc in biodiversity and conservation and has a BSc in zoology. And amongst other things, Smera has played a key role with Ontario Nature's Reptile and Amphibian Atlas program, and also is our resident bat expert. So with that, I will hand over to Smera.
Hi, everyone. Thanks again for joining us. So thanks for the introduction, Caroline. So as she mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about the amazing turtles that we have in Ontario. And I'm going to just shed light on how Ontario Nature actually contributes towards turtle conservation. So one of the ways is through our nature reserves program. So many of you may have actually visited some of our nature reserves, and this map just illustrates where they're found across southern Ontario, reaching all the way from Pelee Island to St. Joseph Island and all the way east to Deep River. These properties are really special places that protect ecologically significant lands and habitat for all of our species at risk turtles in Ontario. And Ontario Nature staff go out and conduct annual monitoring of some of these populations to ensure their health, and also do some restoration work as well for these species. So if you haven't already, we encourage you to visit our website and learn about what nature reserve might be close to you so that you can go out and enjoy some of these beautiful landscapes that we help protect. So another one of our programs Caroline touched on is the Citizen Science Program and the Ontario Reptile and Amphibian Atlas. So this program has done a really great job of engaging our members and general members of the public in actually submitting their sightings of reptiles and amphibians for the past decade. So this program has taken place from 2009 until now. And the goal of this project is to improve our knowledge of the distributions of these herpetofauna across the province. So we've amassed a large database and really helped improve our knowledge. This database has contributed towards countless conservation efforts, including research at educational institutions, species listing. So for example, when the Midland painted turtle was recently listed. They pulled on our data. And now we're actually transitioning from the data collection to the data analysis phase. And we're working on a publication looking at all of the great data that our members and other researchers have contributed towards the database, and looking at overall as a whole how that's going to inform conservation moving forward. We also conduct quite a bit of outreach. So this has taken place on our nature reserves and other properties as well as events that we usually run, like our annual general meeting and at conferences. So we have kind of engaged the public through guided hikes at our nature reserves, and provided presentations on the life history of turtles and conservation and research, and how you all can help, which we'll be highlighting today in our presentation as well. We also contribute towards the policy side of things. One notable event that occurred, which Ontario Nature was really a big part of, was ending the snapping turtle hunt back in 2017. This was a decade-long effort from 2007 to 2017, including so many of our members, people in the government as well speaking up about it, us and all of us working together to really end this hunt against a species at risk. It's listed as a special concern. So thanks for all of your help for making that happen. It was a really proud moment for us, and we continue to champion for the conservation of these really, really special species. So now it's my pleasure to transfer you over to Gabriela Zagorski. She's our Nature Reserves coordinator and really has a special place for turtles in her heart. She's been working on turtles for several years on a number of the different species, and has completed her master's of environmental science at Laurentian University under Jackie Litskis on Blanding's turtles. So she's really an expert on that particular species, but knows a lot about all the other ones as well. So I'll pass it off, and I'm sure you're going to learn a lot of really great, interesting things about these special turtles that we have in Ontario.
Hi, everybody. I hope you can see me and hear me well. So I'm going to get started by talking a little bit about turtle life history, and hopefully that'll give you an understanding of why turtle conservation is so important. So turtles are long-lived with delayed sexual maturity. And so I'm going to use a snapping turtle in this example today, and we're going to compare turtles against bears and deer. So if you look at year 0, hopefully you can see my mouse here, we're going to picture that we have a snapping turtle hatchling, a black bear cub, and a young white-tailed deer. If we fast forward to 5 years later, we still have a juvenile turtle that's about 5 years old. We have one adult black bear and 2 cubs, and 5 adult white-tailed deer and 5 young. Then if we fast forward to 17 years later, so almost 20 years later, we may or may not have a turtle or a snapping turtle that has reached sexual maturity, so can mate and either lay eggs or just mate with females. And we may or may not have a clutch of eggs at this point that could survive to become hatchlings. Then we have 7 adult black bears and 18 young, and 283 adult white-tailed deer and 629 young. So I just wanted to highlight from this how important adult turtles are to the populations that they're a part of. So if one is hit on the road or faces some sort of other troubles, then that can have a really severe impact on the population. And so that's one of the reasons that Ontario Nature does work really hard to protect turtles. So this next slide is just the turtles that you can find in Ontario that I'm going to be talking about today. There are a couple of other turtles you might see that are sort of released pets, but I'm just going to focus on the main ones today. So hopefully you can see my mouse again, and I'm going to start on the left side and work my way down and over to the right. So the first turtle we're going to talk about is the red-eared slider. That's actually outlined in purple because it's a non-native species that's been actually introduced here through the pet trade. Below that, we have the spotted turtle. That one's outlined in red because it is endangered in Ontario. Below that, we have the wood turtle. That one is outlined in red because, again, it's endangered in Ontario. Then we have the musk turtle, or the stink pot. That one's outlined in yellow because it's special concern in Ontario. Then moving over, we have the snapping turtle. That one's outlined in yellow because it's special concern in Ontario. Below that, we have the Blandings turtle, outlined in orange because it's threatened. Below that, we have the northern map turtle, outlined in yellow because it's special concern. Now moving over, we have the Midland painted turtle. And so we actually have painted turtles in Ontario, but they're broken up into two subspecies. So the first of those is the Midland painted turtle, outlined in yellow because it's special concern. And below that, we have the Western painted turtle. That one's actually not at risk in Ontario. And then our last turtle that we'll be talking about today is the Eastern Spiny Softshell turtle. And that one's outlined in red, again, because it's endangered in Ontario. So we'll start by talking about the Midland painted turtle. So in the next couple of slides, I'm just going to give you guys a couple of ID features you can use if you're out looking and you see turtles and are trying to figure out what they are. So the first thing you can look at with the Midland painted turtle is the head. And so sometimes if you're, say, out on a walk and you can see turtles basking on a log, sometimes if they have their heads up, and you see these two, they can look white or yellowish appearing dots on the back of the head, then you're probably looking at a Midland painted turtle. Another thing you can look for with Midland painted turtles is they have this transition of color that happens from their head as it transitions to their neck. So on their head, you can see these yellow stripes, and then that transitions to red. And that red will go along the neck and the legs and the tail. And so none of our other turtle species will have this color transition. So definitely keep an eye out for that. Another thing you're looking for with Midland painted turtles is this sort of red patterning that you can see on the carapace. That's also the top of the shell. So along the margins or the outside of the carapace, you're going to see this sort of red patterning. Another thing to look for if you're looking at the turtle upside down, say, maybe you're helping it across the road and you happen to see the plastron or the belly shell, is a beige colored plastron, sort of beige to yellow looking, with this black, it almost looks like an oval shape. And so this black oval shape touches the middle of the plastron or belly shell. That's something to remember. And it's very clean looking. And this normally does tend to fade with age. So with a pretty old painted turtle, you may not see this. It may just be a beige plastron or belly shell. But with the younger turtles, you will see this black oval shape. Then when it comes to young or hatchling painted turtles, they look very similar to adults. So you can't really see the color transition on the neck that well here, but if you had the turtle, say, in hand, or you could sort of flip it over to see, you would see that color transition. Again, you can see the margins of the carapace, or that top shell, that have that reddy orange coloring, and you can see the coloring on the legs and the tail here. And then if you're looking to tell Midland painted turtles apart between males and females, a cool thing about males is they actually have these really long front claws that they use to tickle females when they're trying to mate. So that's an interesting thing that maybe you'd get to see if you're out on a hike. So now we're going to talk about the Western painted turtle. So if we remember, the painted turtle is the species of turtle you can find in Ontario, but it's broken up into those two subspecies. So that second subspecies is the Western painted turtle. And so some of the things to look for in the Western painted turtle is that they don't have that color transition that I was talking about with the Midland painted turtle. So they just have that yellow striping that continues from their head to all of their limbs, including their tail. Something that you can look for that's not always present is sort of like a web-like looking pattern that you can see on their scutes that are on their carapace of their top shell, and the scutes are just the portions that make up that top shell. And so this webbing that I'm sort of showing here with my mouse, it's sometimes visible in Western painted turtles. Again, you can see it most of the time, but in some individuals, it's very difficult to see. So again, I would probably be looking more for that color transition on the head. Then another thing you can look for if you're holding the turtle or you see it upside down is a very, very different looking plastron. So if we remember in the Midland painted turtle, we saw that oval shape. It was a black oval that was along the middle of that plastron or belly shell. In the Western painted turtle, it almost looks like a splotch of paint. And in every different individual Western painted turtle, this splotch is going to look different, which is very cool. And then also the color of the plastron of that belly shell. So remember, in the Midland painted turtle, we were looking at a beige color. Now we're looking at more of an orange to reddy color. So you can even see that coloring when the turtle is upright and not upside down. So that's another thing to look for. And then another really important feature for differentiating the Western and the Midland painted turtle is actually location. So you're not going to see Western painted turtles unless you live in like the Thunder Bay area or northwest of there all the way to BC. But if you live sort of in central to southern Ontario, you're going to be seeing Midland painted turtles. And then when it comes to the hatchlings of Western painted turtles, they look very similar to the adults. And you can really see that sort of webbing that I was talking about on the adults, but you can see it on the hatchlings as well. And then their plastrons, again, come out with that black paint type looking splotch and are again orange and reddy in color on the hatchlings as well. So they look very similar. And then it's the same thing for Western painted turtle males versus females. You're going to see males having those long claws, and they also have a longer and thicker tail. Now we're going to talk about the red-eared slider. So something to really remember about the red-eared slider is that it is not native to Ontario. It has been introduced through the pet trade. So a lot of the time people will buy turtles, just like this little hatchling here. They look really, really cute. But what they don't realize is that turtles are really difficult pets to take care of. They require a lot of water changes, special lighting, special heating, etc. And for red-eared sliders, the females can get to be about the size of a dinner plate. So they also require a really huge tank to live in. And so people a lot of the time will think, well, it's a little too difficult for me to take care of this, so I'm just going to release it in my local pond. It's going to be a better life for the turtle, etc. However, this is a problem for our native turtle species because red-eared sliders raised in captivity and from different locations can carry diseases that our native turtles aren't used to and can't really fight off. They also compete with our turtles for basking spots. So turtles are ectotherms, and that means that they require the outside temperature in order to regulate their own temperature. And so basking spots are really crucial in the beginning of the season and throughout so that turtles can do their regular activities like foraging, mating, etc. And so if you're going to take anything from this presentation, please discourage people from having red-eared sliders as pets or even purchasing them. Turtles are just much better in the wild in their natural habitats. And so when we're looking at identifying red-eared sliders, obviously by the name of the turtle, we always look for that red going along where the ear is. And so sometimes actually with age, this can fade or even disappear. And so most of the time you can use this to tell if you're looking at a red-eared slider or not, but even if you look at this photo here, you can't see that red ear. So you can look for a couple of other things. So one of the things to look for is the striping that they have on their carapace or that top shell. So none of our native turtles have this striped look. If you also look at their shells, they look a bit bumpy and uneven. And if you compare that to a painted turtle shells look very smooth. And so you can also use that as well. Another thing you can look at is these black splotches that you can see sort of on the bridge scutes. And what these are is just the portions that connect the top shell to the bottom shell of the turtle. And so you can really obviously see these black splotches there. And that's another thing you can look for. Another thing to look for is if you're seeing the turtle upside down, the plastron or the belly shell has these black splotches. But if you remember on the painted turtles, the black splotches touch the center of the shell. In red-eared sliders, they don't. So you can see these black splotches kind of right in the middle of these scutes or those portions that connect the plastron or the belly shell. And then when you're looking at hatchlings, so they come out with that reddier look, and they look a lot like the adults. So they're very, very similar. They again have these black splotches that aren't touching either the outside or the inside of the shell. And so it's fairly easy to identify the hatchling red-eared sliders. So our next species we're looking at is the northern map turtle. And so one really obvious thing to look for with the northern map turtle is this keel on their shell. And so what the keel is, or the best way to explain it, is if you're looking at the turtle head on, like in this photo, it almost gives that top shell a triangle shape. So you can actually see the keel in every one of these photos that I'm showing you here. And that's a pretty obvious feature you can look for when looking at map turtles. They also have a serrated back end of their carapace or top shell, and so you can almost see these triangle-like projections. So again, our painted turtles have a smooth one, and the red-eared sliders can sometimes have an uneven. It can be slightly serrated, but not as serrated as our map turtles here. And map turtles are actually named because of the patterns that they have on their shell. So these circular patterns appear to look like the contours of a map. And if you can look at their skin and their face, that also kind of looks like the contours of a map as well, but you can really see those contour looking lines on this individual here. Then when it comes to looking at hatchlings, they look very similar to adults. This individual looks really light, and they can vary a bit in color, but normally you can see those contour looking lines very, very well. And then when you're trying to tell apart male and female map turtles are really cool because they're actually what's called sexually dimorphic. And what this means is that males and females are different sizes. And so female map turtles are about twice the size of males. So they're about the size of a dinner plate, maybe a little bit bigger. So it's actually really easy to tell females from males, but it can be a little bit more difficult to tell males from young females. And so if you're looking at a male and a young female, what you could look for is males having a thicker and longer tail. From afar, you may not be able to see that, say if you're looking at them with binoculars or something like that. The next species is the common snapping turtle. And so I feel like everybody knows this species for their dinosaur-like looking appearance. And honestly, that is one of the things you can use to identify it. They look prehistoric. And it's actually funny because reptiles were technically around before the dinosaurs were. So technically dinosaurs look like turtles, but we won't get into that today. So one of the things you can look for is this tail with these triangular-like projections. So none of our other turtle species in Ontario have this, so that's really obvious. Size is another thing you can look at. So if you're looking at an adult snapping turtle, they can be between 20 and 50 centimeters in length, not including the head and tail. So they can be pretty big, so that's one easy thing to look for. Another thing to notice is this beak that they have. So obviously for the name, snapping turtles are able to snap. And if you look at this photo here, they actually have what's called a reduced plastron or belly shell. And so that reduced plastron doesn't really allow them to tuck into their shell like other turtles would be able to. And that's actually probably why they developed the ability to snap. And so always remember that, snapping turtles will snap on land because they're afraid. They see you as the predator if you're approaching them. And so they're not snapping to be aggressive. They're snapping because they're afraid for their lives. And then when you're looking at hatchling snapping turtles, they actually do look quite similar to adults. So you can see that big head, the prehistoric kind of look to them, except for they're a lot darker. So they can be sort of like a blacky brown in color. And then if you see the bottom of the shell, that top shell or the carapace here, they have these white dots, at least in the hatchlings that you can see. And those white dots are actually on the plastron or the belly shell as well. And then when it comes to telling male and female snapping turtles apart, it's actually quite difficult. If you see them mating, then the male's on the top and the female's on the bottom, but it can be pretty difficult otherwise. Sometimes you can use tail length because males will have a longer and thicker tail, but it can be quite difficult unless you're actually measuring that. So our next turtle is the eastern musk turtle, named because it actually produces a stinky type musk when it feels threatened. And it's funny because the snapping turtles also do that, but for some reason the eastern musk turtle was named the musk turtle. And so sometimes people will confuse musk turtles for snapping turtles, but musk turtles are really small. So if you can look at this photo of somebody holding it, the turtle with their hand, that is an adult turtle. So they would fit easily in the palm of your hand. And a really neat thing about musk turtles is that their hatchlings are actually some of the smallest hatchlings in the world. So again, look at this thumb. That is a very small hatchling. And so when you're trying to ID musk turtles, the only turtle you'd probably mix it up with is the snapping turtle, but they have this really smooth, highly domed carapace. So a snapping turtle that's this size would probably be a 2 to 4 year old snapping turtle, and it won't have this smooth, highly domed carapace. So if you have that and a turtle this size, you're looking at a musk turtle. They also have this really long upturned snout. And so the snapping turtle has a slightly upturned snout, but the musk turtle has a very long upturned snout. They can also snap like snapping turtles can. And again, they have a reduced plastron like snapping turtles, so they can't really fully tuck into their shells. And again, that's probably why they developed the ability to snap. Then one other thing you can look for is these lines that you can see. So they have 2 lines that you can see that go above and below the eye. And so that's another ID feature you can look for. The next turtle we're going to be talking about is the Blandings turtle. I'm not saying I have favorite turtles, but I've just worked with this one the most, so I happen to love it a lot. And they're very well known for that bright yellow chin. So normally that is your good indicator. If you see that bright yellow chin, you are looking at but they do have the ability to fully tuck into their shells, and actually more than most turtles, because they have what's called a hinge in their plastron or their belly shell. And so that hinge is just right here on these 2 turtles that I'm pointing out with my mouse. And yeah, it allows them to almost close up completely. So this really protects them from predators that could be trying to eat them. So if that turtle is closed up that you're looking at, say you're helping it across the road or anything like that, what you'd be looking for is some sort of like flecking lines or sort of like an almost stripy appearance on the carapace, and also a really highly domed carapace. So these turtles are a medium-sized turtle, so they'd probably be a little bit bigger than your hand, your flat hand, if you put it out, or an adult's flat hand. The hatchlings of this species look really, really similar to the adults, so they come out with that bright yellow chin, and their plastron will look a little bit similar to this, so their plastron will be yellow with some black patterning, but it won't be exactly like the adults. So another thing to mention when looking at adults is that they have these black, almost splotches on their plastron, but those black splotches touch the outside of the shell. So if we remember that red-eared slider that we were looking at, they had those black splotches kind of all in the middle of that plastron or belly shell, whereas with the Blandings turtles, the black splotches are touching the outside. Then when you're looking at comparing males and females of this species, this picture actually does a really good job of showing it, but males will have a concave plastron. So it almost looks like it's caved in, and females will have a flat plastron. Now on to the spotted turtle. So named exactly for what it looks like, the spotted turtle has these beautiful little yellow spots on its carapace or its top shell. So that's a really good indicator Some individuals will have really huge, obvious spots, and some individuals will have smaller ones, but you can always see these spots. Then when you're looking at the face and the legs, you can see black and orange, just kind of a mixture of both. And so that's something really important to look for too. You can even see that orange on the plastron or the belly shell and the bridge scutes, the ones that connect the top and the bottom of the shell. So hatchling spotted turtles look almost identical to adults. And the really cute thing about these guys is normally right when they hatch out of their eggs, they come out with one spot on each of their scutes, or those portions that connect the top of their shell. And then again, their faces are black with orange, sort of a mixture. And on hatchlings, the plastron will be orange with some black splotches on it. And then when you're looking to compare males and females, it's the same as Blanding's turtles. So males are going to have a concave plastron. So again, it looks like it's caved in. And females will have a flat plastron. And then again, like the Blanding's turtles, the plastrons or belly shells of spotted turtles will have these black splotches that touch the outside. So not like the red-eared slider where they are in the middle, but on the outside. Now we're on to the wood turtle. So the wood turtle is a really neat and unique turtle. It's one of our more terrestrial turtles in Ontario. It is also one of the most endangered turtles in Ontario. And so these guys look kind of like tortoises. That's kind of a good way to describe them. So they have what's called these concentric growth rings on their carapace, or that top shell. And it just looks like these circles that are of even distances all the way around on each individual scute, or remember, those are those portions that connect the top of the shell. Sometimes these do fade a little bit with age. They'll get a bit smoother, but mostly on all individuals, you can really see even the lines, if they don't look as obviously grooved as they are in this photo. So sometimes when wood turtles are a little bit wet, if you find them in the water, you can really see this coloring a bit better, unlike in this dry individual. But they sort of have like a yellow, really striped with black carapace or top shell. But again, the best thing to look for is sort of those growth rings and then the colors. So wood turtles will have a really obvious orange coloring that goes from their dark black head and transitions kind of towards the inside of their limbs. And so it will look bright orange in there. And depending on where the species is found, it can kind of look sometimes more yellowy or even red in some areas. And so the hatchlings of wood turtles actually don't look too much like the adults. So they're pretty flat, they look very drab, and people sort of guess that this is so that these turtles can blend in with, you know, mud and the forest floor. But yeah, they look very drab, unlike this bright orange you can see here. You won't really see that on wood turtle hatchlings. Even their plastrons or belly shells will be mostly gray with maybe a little bit of yellowy orange showing. And then again, when you're looking at the plastrons or the belly shells of wood turtles, you'll have these black splotches that touch the outside of the shell, mixed with, you know, these orange limbs. And so that would be one way you could differentiate if you were looking at, say, Blanding's turtle from below and a wood turtle. You're definitely looking at those orange limbs. And then when you're looking at telling males from females, again, the males will have a concave plastron, so it almost looks like it's caved in, and the females will have a more flatter plastron. On to the last turtle we're going to be talking about today. This is the eastern spiny softshell turtle. This one is a very cool turtle. It is so different from all of the other turtle species you're going to see in Ontario because of that flat, leathery, pliable shell. So I feel like you probably won't mix up this turtle with any of our other Ontario species because it just looks so different. But some things you can use to ID this turtle are this like really upturned, pointed, long snout. And so these turtles will actually bury themselves in shallow water. And what they'll do is they'll put their head up out of the water and use that long snout almost like we would a snorkel. And then when they get enough air, they'll just tuck themselves back in. When you're looking at differentiating males and females of spiny softshell turtles, they're just like the map turtles, so they're sexually dimorphic. Females are about twice the size of males. And also, a really neat thing is that right as these turtles are hatching out of their eggs, you can tell if they're male or female. And so males, this is a male here in this photo, will have these really obvious dark circles. And females, like in this photo here, will have almost like a camouflage looking carapace or top shell. Males will also have a rougher or like sandy-like feeling top shell or carapace, whereas females will be completely smooth. And so, yeah, when you're looking at males, you're looking for these closed, black, very obviously dark, thick circles. And with females, you can't really see those. It looks more camouflage. And again, hatchlings look very similar to adults. And another interesting fact about these turtles is that most of the time when people think about turtles, they think that they're very slow. But these turtles are so fast, even on land. So softshells actually spend the majority of their time in the water. But if they are on land, females will come on land to nest and males will go on land to bask. And they feel a threat, they will go running into that water faster than you would expect. Okay, so that is all of the turtle species that I'm going to talk about. And now we're going to move on to a quiz section to test your knowledge. So we're going to put a poll up on the screen. And we're going to give you guys about 15 to 30 seconds to tell us what species you think this is. And then I will explain afterwards which species and sort of what we're looking for to determine what species it is. So we'll just give you a couple more seconds here. All right, maybe we'll close the poll now. All right, so I don't know if you guys can see the results here. John, if you want to let me know if people can, but most people actually said it was a northern map turtle. So 67% said it was a northern map turtle, 9% said it was a red-eared slider, and 24% said that this was a painted turtle. And so it's actually a red-eared slider. And you can't really see, but it does have this red ear right here. Again, like I was telling you, it can fade with age. So in this individual, it has faded. So another thing we're looking at to determine if it's a red-eared slider are these black splotches that I can see on those bridge scutes, or the scutes that connect the top and the bottom of the shell. So look for those black circular splotches. That's also a good indicator. This turtle is a little dirty, so that's kind of unfair, but it does have a rough looking shell and just slightly, like a slightly serrated edge or back end of the carapace or that top shell. So with a map turtle, this would be way more obvious. You would also see more of that, the contour, like patterny map looking design on the face rather than these yellowy looking stripes. I mean, you might be able to see the contours on the shell as well, but it is dirty. So that was a bit of a tougher one. Okay, let's move on to the next one here. Okay, so again, we're gonna give you about 15 to 30 seconds to look at this photo and tell me what species you think it is.
Gabby,
Give
the
you a couple.
results are visible.
They are visible? Okay, perfect, thanks. Okay, just a couple more seconds here. All right, so as you guys can see, most people got it right, yay. It is a snapping turtle. And so what we're looking at here is with if it was a musk turtle, we would see that domed, really smooth shell. So it's a snapping turtle because it has sort of an uneven shell. This is a bit of a younger individual. Obviously, I didn't tell you guys the size or show you anything in this photo to tell the size. But again, a musk turtle would have had a very domed, highly domed, rounded shell. And they would have had more of an upturned snout. Whereas a snapping turtle, again, has a bit less of an upturned snout. You can see that beak. I didn't show you guys the tail, but the tail would look, you know, that prehistoric dinosaur look with those triangle-like projections. But yes, this is a snapping turtle, and most people got that right. So great job, guys. Okay, on to the next one. Again, we'll give you guys about 15 to 30 seconds here, but I hope you get this one. All right, nice. Oh, 100% of people got it right. That's really good. That shows me you were listening. That's awesome. Great job, guys. So yes, it is an eastern spiny softshell turtle. It looks so different. It has that flat, pliable shell, has that snorkel-like nose, and this is actually a female because it has that camouflage-looking pattern. I can just tell by looking at the vegetation kind of how big it is. But definitely almost snapping turtle size is the size that those females get. So good job, guys. Oops, sorry. Okay, so now on to the next photo. So if you just want to ID the turtle species that red arrow is pointing to. And look for some of those ID features that we talked about. All right, we'll give you a couple more seconds here. All right, this was another tough one. So 27% of people said red-eared slider, 49% of people said painted turtle, and 24% of people said northern map turtle. So this is actually a great comparison photo to show you the size difference you can see. So these right here are painted turtles, and this is probably a female red-eared slider. Again, these are younger painted turtles, so they're not, you know, the max size that they would be. But yeah, this is another trick photo because you can't see that red ear. But again, what we're looking for is you can see these circular black splotches that are on the bottom of the carapace or that top shell. And then you can even see the black splotches that would be on the plastron or the belly shell. Again, we're not seeing that striping that we'd be looking for or the patterning we'd be looking for if it was a northern map turtle. We'd want to see more sort of like circular patterns and things around the head. And if it was a painted turtle, you'd see that color transition that I was talking about. So you'd have a yellow head that transitions to red on all of the limbs. And actually, I know we're not talking about the other turtles in this photo, but this is actually a great photo example of those two yellowy white looking splotches that you would see if you could see a painted turtle's head from the back. So that is what you're looking for right there. I know it can be kind of hard to see, but it is a good example of that. So this one was a red-eared slider. Okay. So now onto this photo. Now I'm going to ask you to identify the turtle on the left and then also the turtle on the right. So again, look for those ID features that we were talking about. Maybe about 5 more seconds. Okay. Okay, so most of you got it right with northern map turtle on the left and painted turtle on the right. So for the map turtle that's right here, you can actually see that keel. It almost looks like a triangle shape from the side too. If you could see it from, say, the front or the back, you would really see that keel, but it is kind of obvious in this photo. You can see the serrated edges on the back of the carapace or that top shell, and look at these like map sort of contour looking patterns that you're seeing on that head. So it's so patterned and it's not just stripes there. Another thing I actually forgot to mention with map turtles is that they do have this beige type looking, it almost looks like they put beige lipstick on their top lips. And so that's also another thing you can use to identify them. But I'm sorry I didn't tell you about that earlier, but apparently you didn't need it because you got it right anyway. And then for the painted turtle, again, we're seeing that color transition. You can even see it on the neck here. So yellow fading to a bit of red. The red that's on the carapace or the top shell, the tail, the legs. It's very obvious there. So great job, guys. That was awesome. Okay, and so in this turtle, I'm asking you to identify these 2 turtles on the left and these 4 turtles on the right. Again, look for those ID features. All right, a couple more seconds here. All right, so most of you did get that right. It's Spiny turtles and painted turtles. So again, if you were looking at red-eared sliders on the right side, you'd probably see more of an uneven type looking shell. You wouldn't see this red coloring on those bridge scutes or the scutes that connect, you know, the top and the bottom of their shells. You would see those black splotches on a yellow background. So yep, that's absolutely right for the painted turtles. And then the blended turtles, you can see that bright yellow chin and the super highly domed shell. This is actually a very good comparison to see the size difference between adult Blanding's turtles and painted turtles. So they're quite a bit bigger. Great job, guys. Okay, on to this photo. So again, look for those ID features and let me know what species you think it is based on those. All right, a couple more seconds here. Okay, oh, great job. It is a wood turtle. 87% of people got that right. That's awesome. And so again, what you're looking for, that wood turtle is dark head, almost black looking, that transitions to that bright orange, sort of where the legs are going into that shell. Then you're also looking for the tortoise-like appearance. So you can see those concentric growth rings. The shell does look a little bit rougher, kind of like a red-eared slider, but the red-eared sliders wouldn't have these concentric growth rings like that, and they would not be orange here. So those colors are definitely what you're looking for, and that tortoise-like appearance. So great job, guys. Okay, this is a really hard one. I figured if there were some, you know, more experts in the crowd, they would have fun with this one. We're going to put up the poll here. Again, look for the colors. Look at what you're seeing. Use those ID features that we talked about to try to guess what species these two are. So we're guessing first what turtle's on the left and second what turtle's on the right. It's a little bit hard, so I won't blame you if you get this one wrong. All right. Ooh, that was a close one. People said wood turtle and wood turtle. That was the most. 53% of people said that. 25% said blandings and wood turtle. 16% said blandings and spotted, and 5% said painted and blandings. So it is a blandings turtle on the left and a spotted turtle on the right. So this is kind of an unfair one because on the left is actually a juvenile blandings turtle. But the colors are right. So you're seeing that yellow on the plastron or belly shell, and you're seeing the black that's touching the edges. The wood turtle would be a close one, but it's a blandings turtle. And then on the right side, we're seeing a spotted turtle. So spotted turtles have that really orange looking plastron, and they're kind of the only one with an orange looking plastron. And then those black splotches that are touching the outside. Some of them actually aren't in this photo, but some still are. All right, this is a really hard one. So I have our last photo is a hatchling photo. So take your time, look for the ID features. I think you guys can do well at this one. All right, a couple more seconds here. As a hint, all of these turtles look like the adults. All right. So most of you got it right. 59% said map turtle, blandings, snapper, and spotted. So spotted's pretty obvious. Snapper looks like a snapping turtle, but a lot smaller and darker. That's right. The blandings is a little tricky because you can't see the chin. But yeah, it can be hard with the hatchlings there, but it would have a yellow chin. Again, it doesn't have any of the striping that a painted turtle or a slider or anything would have. And it's not bland enough to be a wood turtle. And then the map turtle has, this one's a light individual, but they normally do have these map type looking patterns, and you can really see it on the head there and the serrated shell. Great job, guys. All right, so now I'm gonna quickly cover how to help a turtle cross the road. I went a little bit over on time, but hopefully I'm not boring you guys. So this is one of the easiest things you can do to protect adult turtles, but I do want to emphasize, only do this if you feel safe to do so. So your safety is the priority. If you can and you feel safe doing it, you can absolutely help a turtle cross the road, and you are making a massive difference by doing it. And so with our snapping turtles, again, they're a lot bigger than our other turtles, and they can be really heavy, so they can be hard to carry. I'd like to emphasize that you can honestly just drag them across the road. You just want to make sure you're doing the right thing. So with a snapping turtle, don't grab any part of the front portion of their shell, because again, their head is there, and you don't want them to snap at you. Again, they're scared, so they're going to do what makes them feel safe, which is snapping at you and trying to scare you away. So you're going to want to grab these turtles by the back of the shell. Don't ever grab them by the tail, because what you can do is if you grab them by the tail, you can sever the vertebrae in their back, and they can actually die from this. So just grab them by the back of the shell, And if you can pick them up, feel free to do so. And you can even place a hand on the plastron or the belly shell, because they can't actually reach down and around to snap at your hands. But if anything, just grab the back of their shell, it'll be serrated, and you can just drag them across. So it's okay if they get a little bit scratched up, because we want them to survive. And so they'll be fine with a couple of scratches rather than, you know, being hit by a vehicle. And so with our smaller turtles, what you can do is just call it, you know, the hamburger or the sandwich method. So just grab them like you would a hamburger or a sandwich, and you can just carry them across the road. With any of the turtle species, make sure that you are carrying them in the direction that they were moving. If you don't know what direction they are moving, watch the individual for a second and sort of try to see where they're trying to go and put them there. Obviously, if it's a divided highway and you have access to both sides, don't just put them in the middle of two roads, put them across both if you can. And just, again, always be mindful of your own safety. So your safety comes first. If you can help, that's amazing, but be mindful of that. I think we are going to share a PDF of this presentation. And so if you need a little bit more information about how to help a snapping turtle cross the road, you can just click this YouTube link and it will give you a great explanation. Now on to what you do if you find an injured turtle. So in Ontario, we have an amazing organization called the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre. And so they actually take in injured turtles, they rehab them, and then they release them in the wild where they were found or collected. And they do this all for free. So you don't have to pay anything when you do this. So if you find an injured turtle, what you can do is you can call this hotline number. And again, we're going to share these slides, so you'll have this slide for the phone number. Some of the other things you can do is have a large bin in your trunk with a dry towel or rag in it. So you can put the turtle in this bin and put a towel over it so it feels safer. This will kind of prevent the turtle from injuring itself further, trying to, you know, cross a road again if it can, and getting hit again, those kinds of things. So that's a smart thing to do to keep the turtle safe. And then you can wait for a turtle taxi driver to show up, or if you feel comfortable doing so, you can drive it yourself. The OTCC is located in Peterborough. So if you live close to there and it's very easy for you, that's absolutely fine. I did also want to emphasize, if you are looking for, you know, things to do to help some of our Ontario turtles, there is always a need for turtle taxi drivers. So if you visit the website that I've listed here, you can sort of get the details on that if you're interested. And then how and where to submit your sightings of turtles. So we actually have an iNaturalist page called Herps of Ontario. I'm sure most of you are familiar with iNaturalist. If not, it's actually very easy to use. There's a phone app, or you can access it on the computer. You just have to set up an account, and then you can submit sightings. So again, you would look for the Herps of Ontario page, and you can just click this add observations here and fill in all that information. In terms of submitting rare or endangered species to the Natural Heritage Information Center, we actually use this iNat page to do that. And so if you submit your sightings here, then you don't have to submit them to the Natural Heritage Information Center. We will do that all for you. So it sort of skips that extra step. And that's kind of the end of my formal presentation, but I am going to share a couple resources with you guys in case you do want to look further into, you know, some of our turtles or other reptiles and amphibians in Ontario. So you can visit our website on the Reptiles and Amphibians page, and there's a lot of great information and range guides that you can look at for all of our species there. If you are like me and you want to have something with you in hand when you're out on walks or in the field, this is a really great, super detailed field guide that you could purchase. It's only 15 bucks, and you can get it if you want by following, you know, this website link, but I'm sure it's available in a number of other places. Again, if you do want something in hand, it's definitely one I would recommend. You can also visit the Canadian Herpetological Society website. So the Canadian Herpetological Society looks to conserve all of Canada's reptiles and amphibians. So, I mean, if this wasn't enough for you and you want more, you can branch out to all of Canada and take a look at some of the reptiles and amphibians that we have there. And with that, I will open up the floor to questions. Thank you guys for listening.
Thanks, everyone. That was a fascinating presentation. So we got a whole lot of questions. So I'm going to keep. If we don't get to all the questions, what we'll do is we're going to send a follow-up email. So we'll answer what we can't live today. So without any ado, there's a few questions about red-eared sliders. So maybe I'll ask a multi-part question to get you guys on your toes. Will they mate successfully with other native turtles? Is there a role for doing a population intervention with the red-eared sliders, and where are they native to?
Oh, okay. So red-eared sliders are native to sort of the Florida area. They don't mate with our native turtles. They can mate with each other though, and their eggs can actually successfully survive in southern Ontario and sort of southern, I don't even think really central, more like southern Ontario. But yeah, so the eggs can survive. If you do find a red-eared slider in the wild, what you can do is you can call animal services, and you can submit that animal there, and they'll try to rehome it to someone who can actually take care of it well and won't just release it back into the wild. And then, sorry, would you repeat the question about, was it a population study?
So there's a question about, what is the current population of red-eared sliders in Ontario?
I could not give you an exact number, but they are very dense in some areas. I am pretty sure we have a page where you can look at their range, but I guess you can't look at density. Yeah, it's very high just because they can successfully reproduce here, and a lot of people release them in the wild. So I know, for an example, I live in the Hamilton area, and on some of the Royal Botanical Gardens properties, you can see up to 30 adult individuals basking on a log on a day. And that doesn't mean that's all of them. That just means it's the ones that are basking at that specific time. So that kind of gives you an idea of density in some areas.
Okay, and then there's a question about snapping turtles. So will they snap at you when they're in the water?
So generally, no. I have handled a lot of snapping turtles, and I have never been snapped at in the water. I'm sure if they felt really threatened, like maybe if you were, say, like hitting their face with your shoe a lot, potentially, but I think the chances of getting bit by a snapping turtle in the water are so low. And I know a lot of people have heard that myth that, oh, if you're swimming at the cottage and there's a snapping turtle in the water, it's going to try to bite your toes off, but absolutely not. They're very curious individuals, and maybe if you have, fish sitting out on a line from fishing, they'll go for that, but they're not going to go for your toes. To them, you're a lot bigger, and they're going to swim away from you.
Okay, and again about snapping turtles, what research is being conducted to see the impact from the end of the hunt?
Oh, that's a really good question. I know there is a bit of research going on at the Ontario Turtle Conservation Centre through an individual named James Patterson. But again, I don't know all of the specifics of the studies that are going on. I could definitely look into that a little further and get a little bit more information. But that is a difficult thing to try to quantify. But it's definitely better that they're not being hunted, because as we talked about with the life history diagram in the beginning, it is so hard for an individual to, reach sexual maturity, and it takes so long that every adult is so important.
Great. Here's another tricky question for you. Which of these species is common in the Ottawa area? And this could be one we follow up with after if you're not sure.
Oh my gosh. Well, a lot of them you can find. Again, with some of the species at risk, we don't really like to give away location information, But I guess in general in the Ottawa area, you could find Blanding's turtles, snapping turtles, Midland painted turtles. Again, as you kind of reach the border of like Ottawa to Montreal, it switches to another species or subspecies of painted turtle. You could find map turtles. You could find, I'm pretty sure you could find sliders. Again, it's starting to get a little, yeah, it's getting a little north there, but I'm pretty sure you can. I don't know if they could reproduce in that area. Yeah, I wouldn't be able to tell you for sure. Yeah. They can? Yeah. Okay. Then yeah, they absolutely can. And I think you could also find musk turtles. Let me look at this diagram. Yep. That's about it for the ones you could find around Ottawa specifically.
And Blanding turtle as well.
Oh, sorry. I thought I said that.
Is the box turtle no longer considered to be native to Ontario?
Okay, so different researchers will give you different answers to this question. A lot of people say that it was introduced by European settlers and they would use it as sort of like a trading item. But then there is some evidence that it did used to exist sort of in the southern parts of Ontario. I wouldn't be able to give you a for sure answer. I'm still unsure if I think it actually was here or not. But what I can tell you is that in the US states that are right, below us, you can find box turtles.
Great. And there's a question about, are there maps showing ranges of each species? It's a good plug for our website.
Absolutely. On the Ontario Nature website, you will find range maps for every species. Yeah.
Okay, what else do we have here? It almost sounds like sort of a joke. Why do turtles cross the road instead of traveling down the riverbank?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Sometimes there isn't a riverbank. And also, you have to think that some of these turtles are really long-lived and they've been around before there was a road there. So to them, they are taking their regular route and they don't really care if it happens to cross a road. They're going to go the direction that they want to go to reach either, if it's a male, they're going to be traveling between wetlands or water bodies. And if it's a female, they're looking for that nesting site that they nest at every year or a different nesting site. So yeah, they cross the roads because they were probably around before they were there and they don't really understand that they shouldn't. If only we could tell them, it would be a lot easier.
Here's a neat one. So can painted turtles vocalize? Ed saw one on a log and thought he heard a rhythmic sound from it. Is that possible?
Yes, so it is possible. Their vocalizations aren't really normally able to be heard by people, but I've definitely seen it in Blanding's turtles where they'll do something where they'll make a noise or they'll kind of like snap their mouths. So it's definitely possible, and yeah, I think almost all turtle species can vocalize, and that has been shown in the literature.
Great. And then can any of these species intermate?
So the subspecies could. I wasn't really going to go into this because it gets a little complicated, but Midland painted turtles and Western painted turtles, well, they're the same species, so obviously they'd be able to mate, but they do have a hybridization zone where you'll find sort of a mix of both, sort of like characteristics of each. That does get confusing. And it would probably require genetic testing to tell, what percentage of each. There also are cases of wood turtles mating with Blanding's turtles. This is, again, very rare. But there is an individual that does exist. I think they even have an Instagram account of a hybrid between a Blanding's and a wood turtle. And they can do that because they're part of the Emydid family. And so, yes, they're not directly related, but like, I don't know if you were to look at it on a hierarchy, from a hierarchy standpoint, they are distantly related. So technically, yes, but rarely.
Okay, there's a good comment here about snapping turtles. Always be aware, so when moving across the street, always be aware that the turtle's rear claws, they're not too sharp, they're long and strong. It's something I learned by experience, actually, too.
Yeah, I probably should have mentioned that. I kind of skimmed over that a bit because I was going quickly over it. But yes, their limbs are very strong. And so sometimes what you can actually do is if you can grip actually the back of their legs as well, that can be tricky to do. But if you can grip the back of their legs with their shell and kind of like drag them, don't drag by the legs, definitely just sort of like hold the legs up. It'll kind of stop that scratching a little bit. But again, maybe it's just easier to wear gloves if you're going to do it, or put a towel in front of your hands, because yeah, they can scratch and it can hurt a little bit sometimes. So yeah, definitely be wary of that.
Okay, another question. So do wood turtles spend most of their time out of water?
Depends on what time of the year, but yes, like during the active season, the males will kind of stay close to the water and they kind of guard their territories. But females will just venture out and they can go, kilometers away from water to find some of their favorite foods, like say raspberries and things like that.
Good question, actually. Why didn't the pet trade choose native species over red-eared sliders?
Well, I think it would really be an issue if the pet trade wanted to take native turtles from the wild. I think conservationists like us would probably have a problem with that. And that's why you normally see non-native turtles in the pet trade. In places like the States, you actually are allowed to take native turtles and have them as pets. But honestly, I would just recommend not having turtles as pets. They are really difficult pets. They live a long time. Like if you have certain turtle species, sometimes you have to write them into your will because they're going to outlive you. So I would just recommend not having them.
I just wanted to add that it's actually illegal to take any species from the wild and keep it as a pet, and that's for a number of different reasons, obviously, because these species are so long-lived, and taking an individual out of the wild can have a really detrimental effect to the overall population. But also, sometimes people take a wild animal into their care, keep it for a while, and then re-release it, and then you have the issues of any pathogens or fungi or anything like that they might have come into contact with in your home or in an aquarium that they're then going to go and release into the wild. So that's a major issue as well.
Absolutely.
So one attendee said, I'm finding this really informative. I'd love to see a similar workshop on frogs, weasels, so on. The question here is, what is the status of turtles at Misery Bay on Manitoulin Island?
That's a very good question. So I don't know if you are saying this because you read the publication that came out from these turtles, but there was a mass mortality in Misery Bay, and that was actually mostly due to otters. So native species eating native species. And so these fluctuations happen. And I honestly wouldn't be able to tell you the status right now because I'm not really familiar with that site. I again just know it through the literature and the publications that came out because of it. But I'm sure you could actually contact the local MNR and ask them about the status, and they might be able to give you an answer.
And relatedly, so for the turtles at our Quarry Bay Nature Reserve, is there any concern? What was the name of the infectious disease that was affecting some turtles?
Ranavirus?
Yeah, and is there any concern about ranavirus there?
That's a really good question. Maybe Samara, you might know if there's been ranavirus found in that area. I don't think so.
Yeah, we don't have any record of that. But I mean, if that was an issue, then we'd definitely be looking into it. But so far, there's no record of ranavirus in that particular population. And also, I don't believe at Misery Bay either, because that whole mass mortality event was attributed to predation, and also because of really low water levels in that particular year as well, which enabled higher levels of predation than in previous years.
Yeah, and I would just add that, if some of the ways that ranavirus is spread is actually from people moving things like their boats or their gear to other places. And for Ontario Nature specifically, we sanitize everything and make sure that it's decontaminated if we're ever going to be, you know, entering a different location than one we've previously been in with our gear.
Okay, maybe I'll do two more quick questions. One is, do wood turtle growth rings relate to a year's growth?
So this is a hard one. They can, but they don't have to. And so growth rings form, some people call growth rings annuli, but that's actually incorrect because growth rings form during stages of activity of turtles. So if it's, you know, eating a lot in one period, getting a lot of sun, whatever, and then it goes into sort of a period of dormancy and then goes back and is foraging, eating, you know, etc., it can actually get 2 growth rings in one season. So technically, no.
Okay. Another question, actually, there's a couple of questions, a couple of variations of this one, and maybe this will be the last question. Should non-native turtles be removed from the wild?
Yes. I do believe they should, again, because of the potential for disease, because of the competition alone with our native species for basking spots and things like that. I do think that they should be removed. And
then I guess the follow-up is what would you do with them?
Yeah, and so there are a couple of organizations that do house red-eared sliders. And that would have to be one of the options, or we'd have to look into some sort of, you know, a facility where they could be kept.
Okay, so we're at a little bit over. It's just about 12:20 right now, so I think we should probably end it.